Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, as always. I'm very excited for this conversation that we're going to have today. I have Tania Leanne with me. She is a wonderful part of Avalon Spirit. She is a medical medium, a wonderful medium as well, an intuitive, psychic. She's tapped in. She's tapped in. And if you want to know more about Tania, I have done episodes with her already. And the reason why I say that is because today we're going to talk about some really cool concepts that she's been getting downloads from her guides and through her podcast with Nette. It's called One Foot in Both Worlds, Keeping It Real with Tania and Nette. These two ladies are amazing souls, very gifted. I've had the chance to connect with Nette in some courses too. She's wonderful. So through their experience in the podcast, they have come into some wonderful knowledge about what they call these seeds. And these seeds, I mean, Tania, you're going to do a better job, but these seeds that are within us of journeys, potentials that can be activated through different things, but sometimes we activate too many or at a different time. Now, if you're thinking like, what is she talking about? We're going to dive into exactly this because it's such useful information. When I heard it, I was like, whoa, that's a mic drop moment. So all of this to say, Tania, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you back. It's been too long.
It has been. It absolutely has been. I very much like chatting with you. It's been
Oh,
wonderful.
yeah. So let's dive into the seeds. Can you better explain than in my intro what you mean by the seeds? Where did it come about? What does it mean?
Absolutely. So this experience and journey with this podcast with Nettie was truly like a very spirit-led, fascinating experience. So the very like series one of the podcast, we basically just talk about the basics like chakras and what happens in a reading and whatever. And then spirit kind of took over and they were like, no, these are the things that we're going to talk about. So I have to give Nettie a lot of credit because her ability to download and then regurgitate information was phenomenal. And
It
we were
was.
both, sort of getting all these pieces and kind of putting it all together in the podcast and basically talking about it. So the seeds, it's something that they showed us that just kind of sits on the nervous system, basically. And as we were talking, Nettie and I, before we went on the podcast, which was really unfortunate that we didn't press,
Oh, that
record
happens
right at
so
the
often.
beginning. Yeah, because we were just trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
And these seeds, like, it was just this like paradigm shift of sort of how we understood that, the soul decided on the contract. But what it is these seeds are in the body and they're basically passed through our cells and our DNA. I have no scientific, explanation for this. This is just basically the message from spirit. But spirit chooses the body to go into based on the seeds that are implanted from like ancestral situations or your own. So it was almost like the Akashic records are these seeds that are implanted in the body. And that was just fascinating to us. But one thing that they said is that what can happen is when we try to dive too far into past lives or why am I like this and almost going too far into the spiritual, we can actually activate these seeds at a time in our life that we're not actually supposed to, because it's almost like spirit puts it there. They have a bit of a blueprint and a plan for how they're going to get to these places of these seeds sort of being activated. But if we're digging in too much, it comes in, 5 years before we're actually ready for it. So if it had come in at the early, like later when we're actually ready for it, we might have had more skills and abilities to actually be able to process it at that time.
So do you think that something like plant medicines, for example, can sometimes trigger or open these seeds way too soon? And that's why sometimes when people do, say, ayahuasca or psilocybin, and they have this huge mind-opening experience, they can't quite handle it because it's too much too soon? Do you think that's connected to the seeds?
That's not quite the way that it was shown to me, but I think what you're talking about is the subconscious. So
Okay.
yeah, actually, yes, they're saying yes, that if you go too far into the subconscious, which I can explain,
Okay.
that absolutely that can happen and you're just not ready for it.
Okay.
So I think like the way that spirit sort of showed us is that you just kind of have to go through life, take what comes up in front of you, work through it and heal through it. And it's such a simple concept, but what they were actually kind of explaining to me this morning before we got started was that emotions are the tricky part because emotions are what actually, when they become trapped, essentially, and I'm simplifying it, when they essentially become trapped because we're not going through that full sort of emotional process, that's how it kind of gets stuck there and not fully processed and released. So to just go through, so we got that, and that was a completely different view of past lives. And the other thing that I'll sometimes hear people say is that, oh, I'm dealing with this, but it's not even mine. And unfortunately, the sad reality of the information that we received is if there's a pattern or something that you're working through that's actually like down your familial line, it has landed in your lap and you do actually have to process it in some way. So as frustrating as that can be, where you're like, I don't even know where this came from, like this doesn't even make sense, it is still in your lap to actually process and deal with and not sort of spiritually bypass away from it. So it was very much like they used the phrase teaching you how to human, and it was very much like these are the basics. Let's get back to the basics. Let's take spirituality into sort of a how to, Cole's notes kind of how to do everything. And then the podcast sort of developed further into explaining the different ages that and again, this was Nettie's download. I This information is spirit, but of course she was the channel, and it came down to the intuitive and physical balance. So like when you're young and you're basically looking to procreate, you're not necessarily in like a high intuitive place within your life. You're more in the physical because you're looking for attractive people and all of that stuff, right? And so it sort of moves into the balance of what it's supposed to be in your life. So often when you're older, the intuitive and physical balance will change, where you're more focused in the intuitive and less sort of in the physical. And I think that can be seen just in what we find attractive in people, like,
Mhm.
do I just find you, physically attractive, or do I find you a little more attractive on more the intuitive side? And excuse me, they even talked about, I don't know why, but every single time that I get on a podcast and spirit comes in, my throat kind of goes, gets all kind of itchy. And sometimes I'll chew gum or something just for my throat, but then I look silly because I've got this hunk of gum in my mouth.
That's okay.
Um, the other thing they said was that the physical body, it's not about spirit being a certain frequency when it comes in to actually create frequency. It's the body itself. So some bodies actually have the ability to hold different frequencies, but spirit is all kind of the same frequency, if that makes sense. And I recognize that there's higher frequency spirits, and I understand that, like in teachers and masters and all of that. But it was very much about the importance of the physical body being naturally created in a way that can handle certain frequencies. So you're going to look at people like us that have the intuitive abilities. It's because our physical body actually has that ability, not necessarily because of the spirit that we inhabit or that
Interesting.
inhabits us. Yeah.
Is that is that part of a seed then? Do we have a seed that makes that possible? Or are you meaning the seeds are then emotional
So
ancestral
this
traumas?
both. So the
Okay.
seeds can be sort of that ancestral life lesson that you're sort of meant to work through, but it can also be things that we pick up along the way for ourselves. So I'm a police officer. I've had a fair amount of traumas that I've dealt with. So if I'm not processing that properly, it becomes this seed that basically sits on my nervous system. And when it sits on my nervous system, that's when we get triggered. Like that's how we end up in those triggerable moments. So even if it's ancestral, and let's just say it's abandonment, you've never actually experienced abandonment in your life, but you've got this abandonment sort of trigger, that's how it will happen. And it'll be like, trigger, okay, this is what you need to sort of look at and process as you're moving through life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. So it's almost like they're kind of attached to your nervous system
Mhm.
energetically to
Yes,
be triggered. But sometimes if we look too deeply inside sometimes and continually searching and searching, then we open up and trigger more than we're meant to and then
at that
overload
time.
the nervous system.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
I,
and it
I,
was fascinating. Like
yeah.
it was truly all fascinating. Like so seeds are like energetic memories,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And then like series two, it talked all about the path to realignment. I've got some notes here.
Hmm.
And it talked about diet, mind, body, air, water, sun, and sleep being the most important piece because sleep is when we basically reconnect to the universe. And whether we're consciously aware of it or not, but that's when it's processing everything in our sleep, right? And it fuels and takes care of the pineal essentially. And the pineal, as it has been explained, some of this is in the podcast, some of it's going to be coming in the podcast, but the pineal is what needs to be developed in order for the soul to come into the body because it's almost like the bridge and sort of the gateway. Um, so it's where the mind, body, and spirit plug into the cosmic charger and basically refuel,
Mm.
to refuel the physical body, um, and fueling the pineal. And I'm taking a look at my notes here. Sorry. Another really interesting thing that they brought up about diet was seasonal eating. So whatever it is, plant medicine, whether it's, dandelions or whatever is blooming or growing in your area at that time is the vitamins and minerals that your body actually needs. So obviously, I'm going to eat a mango. We don't grow mangoes here, but if we can try really hard to sort of stick to that seasonal eating, that will actually help fuel the body and fuel the pineal as well.
Mm.
Um, Questions? Because I've got
There's,
a lot more to go into.
I know there's so many questions. Um, so, so basically the series on your podcasts or the series on your podcast covers kind of the whole integration of spirit consciousness, ancestral consciousness into the experience of being human
Yes,
and what it means to actually be human with consciousness.
yes,
So, that being said, let's go back to the parts about emotions because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? They get stuck in feeling the emotion fully.
yes,
I think even from my own experience, I think we perceive we're feeling the emotion fully, but we're actually not because we're trying to hurry up through the experience of it because we don't want to feel it, right? So, what's your take on the emotional impact on the body? Has spirit ever showed you that? Like,
yes.
what? Yeah, tell me about that.
So this was actually a recent download for me, and it's not on the podcast, but I'm so excited to share it. So they showed basically somebody crying and then stopping and being like, I shouldn't feel this way, or that's enough. But a lot of us, I think, were raised like that, where it's like, okay, you've had your time, you're done. And not actually going through that full, it might start with anger and then it moves into crying and then it turns into grief and then it turns into this complete feeling of defeat and sadness and pain and then maybe like an hour or two of like depression, then maybe you're done, but
Yeah.
really going through that. And what they showed me is when you stop that process, and interestingly, that process can stop for happiness too, because a lot of people don't allow themselves to be truly joyful either. So it's not picking and choosing which emotions,
Yeah.
we're not fully feeling. Basically, it showed it like, let's call it they're showing me as a picture, and it's like a bubble. And it's like, okay, we're working through it. Nope, we stopped. And that energy, how they explained it, is that it attaches to free radicals in the body. Now, this gets a little bit woo-woo for me because I like to keep my mediumship and stuff really quite grounded and, into like, how do we live real life, while being spiritual and intuitive. But it said it attaches to free radicals. And I actually had to look it up what a free radical was. And it's basically, I hope I wrote it down. Pieces, I want to say oh my gosh, it's like something in your body that doesn't actually have a partner. So this energy from these emotions attaches to that, and then it will attach to your nervous system. So
Mm,
again, like the nervous system, the way they show it to me is that it's all the nerves, but then it flows out into sort of our energetic body. And in that energetic body, that's how we get triggered. And when we get triggered, we need to go through the full process of it and not try to get out of it because it's a clue. It's a clue to your body. There's something here that needs to be processed. It's stuck and it needs to actually move through. So there is some like an energetic type healing that can break that up. But again, you don't want to energetically um, be trying to break up things that aren't ready to be broken up, if that makes
mm.
sense.
So then I'm sure people are wondering, how do you know what's ready?
I am working on it. I
I
am
love that
working.
answer.
It's a great question, and I don't actually totally know the answer.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
and there's some guides that I've been working with to sort of come with like a healing modality that um addresses that. And I don't have all the information yet. I'm sure you know
Yeah,
what that's like. It's
I
like
do.
I've
Yeah.
got 75% of the story
Yeah.
and it's taking me months, to get it
Yeah.
all and make sense of it and be able to regurgitate it. And I kind of understand it, but I don't fully understand how exactly to hit specific ones because I don't
Yeah.
feel like it's a human thing. It's not like, oh, okay, so today we're going to work on the trigger for loud noises, and that's what I'm energetically healing. It's like a combination between your guides, my healing guides, my energy guides, and letting them know which ones are ready to go instead of us as humans deciding that we know, if that
Exactly.
makes sense.
I
Because I
totally
think we
get
need to
that.
work in unison. Yeah.
Mhm. And then it's so individualized too. So to say that it only goes in one pattern would be different for everybody, depending on what's coming up, what they're in, what life has thrown at them at that point. So I love that answer because I think it's so true. And I'm sure you feel the same way that like we love to lay things out in a chronological order, some sort of linear order as humans to describe it, understand it, and then it's a nice, pretty package. But if we're really working in flow and energy and consciousness, it's not linear, right? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, you're 100% right that there's so often where it's like, well, I understand up to this point, but then I don't know, right?
Right.
Because it's so complex. And I think that's beautiful, actually. I think that's really beautiful. So,
Yeah.
what then happens to that seed once the healing piece has happened? Is there still a residual? Like if I take it into DNA, for example, in our epigenetics, when the cell goes to replicate itself, it looks at all the programs that it has from ancestry, and it'll take what it can from its external environment within the cell to decide how it can replicate. So it'll replicate a really good program if it's got a lot of good energy, good food, good nutrients, good whatever, and replicate the good program. But if things go wrong, it may replicate a negative program, even though that's not the desired one, but maybe that's the only energetic capacity it has. So it still keeps a record of it within the DNA. Would it be similar with these seeds? Would it still be like a deflated seed that just sits there, or does it kind of disappear?
The way that I'm shown is that it disappears.
Okay.
So, like, my father passed about a year and a half ago, and he left me with some traumas. And he, they're bringing this to me right now. So basically, the way that, and I take me back if I'm not fully answering your question,
Yeah.
but they said when you're born and you're raised in your family, there's like an energetic sort of imprint. And they showed it to me like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like if you're sort of at the bottom and that's the frequency or energetic imprint sort of your family, you can't reach for or get any other things because you're just at that frequency. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Then as we go through life, as we go through sort of working through these things and dissolving them, and they do dissolve, but it's not just us, because what they showed me was that my dad had a part, and he came through in spirit saying, I have a part in this that I didn't clear up while I was there, and I can help break this down. So they can break it down, spirit can break it down, and we can break it down on our own. So it's quite complex, but what I'm trying to say is that some of the seeds that I inherited were from trauma through my family. But what can happen is I can work through those things in this lifetime, and then I'm no longer passing it off to on to my offspring. But I had like this moment of panic when we were doing this podcast because it was like, oh my God, I had so many unhealed things when my son was born. Like, how much did I actually pass
Hmm.
into him, into his cells and DNA? Like, I do. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And there's an energetic component to it too. So even though it was passed to him, if I work through those things as I'm raising him, it energetically removes, which is just that, because then we're changing that energetic imprint from our familial line. Am I making sense?
100% sense.
Okay,
I
good,
am
good.
completely following this, and it really aligns with um, how I have understood it to work too. I love your descriptions of it, but like, and we've all talked about it a lot, but like healing ancestral lines. Not only does it
Mhm.
heal from those that came before you, but it heals those that come after you. And like you
Yeah.
said, energetically, even if they're born. And it's the same way that when people say there was distance with them and their parents, before their parents passed, they were able to heal it, or the parent could apologize or whatever, it changes that frequency,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so I love how you're bringing in this concept because essentially, whatever is coming up in our body, if I'm understanding this correctly, whatever's coming up for our mind, body, or spirit, if it's a mental trigger, an emotional trigger, a physical trigger, the healing for it also has to be done within the trinity of mind, body, spirit. It's not always just one thing, right? So if we're
Correct.
only looking at the body as a physical thing, put the medicine or the band-aid on, that's it, we're missing the imprints it creates or the ancestral pieces that are surfacing as well from that experience.
Hmm. But one big thing that they really wanted to bring home is that it's not that like we're explaining the complexity of it, but it's actually not that complex if you just face and walk through what is coming in front of you in life.
Yeah.
You can do it, period.
Yeah.
You know, if energy healing helps you, and I know a lot of people that like energy heal themselves, but as long as you're just facing life as life comes and you're moving through it and you're getting through it, you are doing the work.
Hmm.
Like, it's not like they put us in these human bodies to forget that we're spiritual, to forget that we understand energy, to be like, sucks to be you
Yeah.
because you don't actually have a spiritual practice. So, you're never going to dissolve anything. You
Yeah.
do just by moving through it and just by walking through life.
Yeah. That's
It
so
really is that
interesting.
simple. It's fascinating. And please go.
No, I was just going to say I understand that concept too. I find often when I'm doing even cosmic consciousness, I take 45 minutes to describe a concept that once you understand it is actually very simple. And Spirit
Yes.
says this over and over. They're like, to explain it is going to be complex, but once you understand it, it just is.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, I really understand what you're getting at with that.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating and it's interesting to know all of this, but we're just not doing anything wrong. We're not doing it wrong to just move through life.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can overcomplicate it in trying to understand these different concepts. And oh, okay, now I need to do this. Oh, now I need to do this. No, you need to have the hard conversations. You need to feel your damn feelings, which sucks. Like I am certainly not sitting here saying that, when I'm curled up on a ball on my couch, bawling, that I'm enjoying myself. It's not
Yeah.
fun, but
Yeah.
it just can be done that way. And it was so interesting this morning when they came in and they were talking about, they're like, those emotions are real tricky because the emotions are of the human body, but there's also an energy that comes from spirit with it.
Hmm.
But it's mostly a human experience. And I know that. I mean, having spirit come through, never have I had them come through and been having a hissy fit or angry, or, they might come through in that way to get a point across humanistically, but
Yeah.
they're basically just made of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can completely understand that. And it's hard because in those moments as a human, when you're really facing the hard things, whatever's coming up, mind, body, or spirit, or maybe it's all three, and you're at that point where you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel this. And you're panicking. And like, I've been there, you've been there, where you're like,
Yep.
oh my God. And then it's like there's this surrender point where there's
Yes.
nothing left to do but kind of let go and free fall backwards. And I find sometimes, as scary as that can be, that's also the moment where you learn to really observe what's actually coming up for you, right? Like what is actually coming up. You may be having, like if I take my health journey, I may be having physical things coming up that are scaring me big time, right? But when I finally reach that free fall point, well, what's actually right behind them? Oh, look at this emotional piece that's surfacing of me feeling, say, not supported or unheard. Where is that coming from? Where did that happen in
Mm.
my lifetime? Or is that a theme in my ancestry? Right? Like that free fall point when we feel so afraid is actually sometimes that point of liberation
It's
if we're willing to look
surrender.
at it. Yeah, surrender. I
And
know.
I think that's what you and I were talking about sort of off screen
Yeah.
before we pushed record, because we've both been sort of going through some health journeys.
Yeah.
And yesterday I was laying on my couch, which I shared with you. I was like, I got nothing left. Like I'm losing my will.
Mhm.
And until you said that, I was like, I was devastatingly defeated. But when you said that, I was like, no, that's surrender.
Mhm.
That's when we say, all right, what do you got for me?
Yeah.
Because my humanistic self is done,
Yeah.
cooked, done.
Yeah, and that's neat because that's something that was explained to me by my guides a little while back. I think even just in the summer of that surrender point, of the point where the human you, the intuitive you, the every part of you says, I don't know the answer because we are so trained. And I say trained, but I also think it's a good skill. But as humans to try and figure it out, right? We're
Yes.
very creative. Uh, we're curious and all of that. And we want to figure it out to create solutions. It's very natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's something in that true surrender point of saying, I don't know the answer anymore. I don't know where to turn is sometimes when we can then find some new creative idea or some new thing. Like we get out of our own way and see what the next layer is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a powerful
And
point.
and here's the next point that they're bringing up in relation to the processing of emotions is So the podcast carries on. We talk about some super, I think it's brilliant. Like,
I do too.
not
I
to
really
not
do.
to toot my own horn, toot toot, but it's brilliant information that I think a lot of people can absolutely benefit from. But it moves into talking about the conscious, the pineal, and the subconscious, and how all of those interact together. And it talks about parallel lives and frequency. Nettie did those individually. It was brilliant
Mhm.
what she was able to bring through. It was fabulous. So absolutely listen to those. But I do recommend that people start, like, if you're just new, start at the beginning. But I would say series two for the more advanced is sort of where you're going to get all this information. And
Mhm.
you kind of have to listen to them all because they build on each other. But it goes into the conscious, the pineal, and the subconscious. Now, the subconscious is like universe. And the pineal is this bridge in between that kind of translates the information and brings it into the conscious. Now, you brought up something interesting because you said, you're trying to figure it out and you're trying to place it, which I do too. I'm like, I want to understand, okay, I've had this meltdown and I want to understand if that was because my period was coming, that I hadn't eaten that day. Did I get enough sleep? Was I dehydrated? Or am I really like,
Yeah.
actually losing my shit? Like, am
Yes.
I okay? Right. So I like to kind of put stuff into boxes. But what's interesting is that when you're in that conscious space and trying to process, you can't break up the seeds, is how they show it to me. You can't.
Mhm.
It's impossible because you're actually, maybe I'll just keep explaining. So then they moved it into explaining to me because I was going through something at the time. And I was like, but how? Like, how do I know when I'm actually in that pineal space? Because the pineal is basically the space that we actually should be living from.
Mhm.
And I'm like, but how? And they brought in brain waves. I was like, oh, which is super interesting. So the beta brainwave is using the conscious mind. This stuff's not in the podcast yet. The theta and delta is the subconscious mind, which is like the dreamer and the healer. The alpha is the pineal in that sweet spot.
Mhm.
And then there's gamma, which is like the spiritual sort of plug in. The thing that was super interesting is they kept saying to me, there's 4 to 5 points in the pineal space, which is the ideal space in which we want to be in those particular brain waves in order to process, because we have two nervous systems. We have the physical nervous system and we have the intuitive nervous system. And that's what spirit does, is it brings those two nervous systems together so that they can actually coincide and work together. But what happens when we're triggered? It separates and we get
Mm.
bounced out. We get bounced out of that nice pineal alpha, uh, theta, delta, gamma sort of space, and we go straight to beta, to that conscious processing, where we're like, well, I felt this and this happened, and that's how I feel, instead of kind of falling back into that intuitive space and processing it there. So that's why they kind of build up, is because our spiritual nervous system and our physical nervous system goes bing,
Mhm.
straight to conscious. When it's aligned and sort of hooked in together, that's when we can be in that pineal space. And super interesting, they talked about um, uh, a different brainwave that really can't be targeted or mapped, and it's called Zeta, which I
Mm.
thought was super interesting because I've got it in front of me. This is so much information. Beta, theta, delta, alpha, gamma, and then there's one more. I can't remember what it was, but it skipped into zeta. And
Interesting.
zeta is, how they explained it was that, have you listened to the telepathy tapes?
Yes,
Oh my gosh, absolutely fascinating.
it is
Hey.
fascinating. Yeah.
And a really good example of how their physical bodies aren't working. So they're living in their subconscious essentially, like they're back there in the subconscious,
Hmm.
connected at all times to the universe. But they said that for the most part, those are the people that are going to hit that zeta, that really quite high brainwave.
Yeah.
So super Funny story. I don't even know how to share it, but as you know, I'm a police officer.
Go for it.
I was out at this pub and having some drinks with friends, watching the band. Da, da, da. My friend was over off in a corner, and there's something else that they want me to go back to, which is when we truly process that more life lessons don't come up. So if you can
Okay.
remind me of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting at this, they had like those long sort of group tables.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting at this table, and this super creepy dude is like, we're talking and, we're drinking, we're just kind of shooting the shit. And I lean over to listen to the guy that's kind of beside him. And this guy shoves his tongue in my ear,
What?
licks all up in my ear, and licks up the side of my face. It was the most disgusting thing. Like, I'm literally at a pub and I'm like getting sexually assaulted. Like,
Hmm.
little does he know,
Yeah, I know. Wrong person. Not that there's a right person, but yeah, bad move.
right? So I step back and I'm like floored about this. And I start getting really lippy because, I've got some spice and kind of telling him off. And I grabbed my stuff, or no, I didn't grab my stuff. I went to go try to find my friend, and I went over there and I'm like, oh my God, you guys, this is what just happened. There's this other guy sitting at the table. He's like, look, grab your stuff, come sit over here. So, and I'm just going to say I'm a police officer. Like that's my full-time job. And I go back to the table. I start gathering my stuff. And then his buddy goes, man, you need to apologize to her. Like, and I looked at the guy and I was like, what's your problem? I was being lippy. I mean, I'm allowed.
Hmm.
And he turns to me, threat signals through the roof, fists clenched, jaw angry, looks me in the face. He goes, you're a fucking woman. You're supposed to just take it. And Cop
What?
Tanya, oh my gosh, Ginette, it was disgusting. Cop Tanya jumps in. I've got this guy in my face, like all these threat cues. I grab him, toss him down on the ground.
Oh my goodness.
I basically took this dude out in the pub. He ended up getting kicked out, and it was awful. The pub ended up banning him, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a perfect example. And I believe that A, it happened because the guy needed to be put in his place. And two, it was triggering and it
Hmm.
was upsetting and it was traumatizing. And I recognize that, like, on the scale of, sexual violations, it wasn't horrific, but it was also disgusting. Like, I should be able to go to a pub and,
Yes.
not
Yes.
have somebody licking my ear and my face. But it's barely even talking to him. It was bizarre. So after, I'm like trying to process it, but I couldn't.
Mm.
Like, in days later, it was still really bugging me. And I'm working through it, working through it, working through it. And Spirit said, they showed me that's what happens is you get triggered. It creates that nervous system response. It goes tick, and then it throws you into that beta, and you start trying to process things intellectually in
Mm.
that beta brainwave. So
Right.
if you can calm your nervous system, if you can get that calm to a calm place, get those kind of brought back in together, then you have almost like that clear water slide, for
Hmm.
that processing of it to actually happen.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yeah, like getting deeper into our bodies again to process
Yes.
versus just the mind.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really neat way too to kind of explain the beauty of somatics, right? Why somatics is so
Yes.
significant for processing because our body stores the energy and it would make sense. It's stored like a seed or triggered by a seed in the energetics of the nervous system when it's not allowed to be a part of the conversation when the conscious mind takes over.
Exactly. And they made it very clear that it is really normal for that to be the process. Like, you're not doing something wrong. Because I don't know, I've been a police officer for 25 years. I got triggered. I
Yeah.
got my nervous system was frazzled.
Hmm.
Like, not to mention the adrenaline and everything else that, sort of chemically happens in your body in that it just kind of separates it, right? And that's
Hmm.
okay. And that's normal. But then our job becomes sitting back, calming ourselves when we're ready. Like, that can be, there's horrifically traumatic events, and that's okay. And it's okay to be bounced out of it, but just recognize that it then sort of needs to be brought back in. And then that's how it moves through and it actually gets dissolved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a really, upsetting experience, but a beautiful understanding that came from it.
Yeah.
And like, isn't that amazing sometimes how we gain these pieces of wisdom? Like, again, wisdom cannot just be read in a book. Wisdom
Mhm.
comes through an experience, oftentimes from something challenging or very triggering. But if we look, like you said in the very beginning, if you look at everything that is showing up for you, you can move through it. But if we
Yeah.
only just hang tight to, a certain aspect, just the conscious mind, we're missing parts. And again, it doesn't mean that that's easy. Like you said, it's not like you were just simply peaceful and let me look at everything that came up, right? Like you were very triggered and rightfully so, but there's so much more available to us if we look beyond kind of the linear or the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they just brought something in and then it left. But it was, if I just kind of tried to move past it without the divine guidance that I was receiving on how this happens, I would have sort of sat in that conscious mind and been like, that guy's a prick, da da da. And this wasn't right because it's violating, and sort of go through this whole process of this intellectual sort of explanation of why that wasn't okay and why it was upsetting, which is happens, which is true. It would still be there. Like, I would go to a pub again and have someone get too close to me, and then I might be like,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
like, or the example that they showed me was, you go to a beach and there's a tiger on the beach, and the tiger lunges at you and you're like, oh my God. You're going to avoid beaches. You're going to, every time you go to a beach, you're going to be tense, you're going to be afraid.
Hmm.
So, and they're talking right now so much about that chemical reaction within our bodies when that happens, how that can also cause sort of that separation. And they're saying this is normal. It's normal to have that because it brings your body into fight or flight, which helps you. But eventually we need to, get our systems calmed down. But if we're continually going onto the beach, we're continually having that tiger be
Hmm.
there, it compounds, and then the chemicals in our bodies. Yeah. And it's such a complex topic, and
Hmm.
it's fascinating, but I try really hard to just bring it down to the basics, right?
Yeah.
And just get yourself calm, feel the feelings, feel the fear.
Yeah.
Feel how scary that was. Feel how violating that was.
Hmm. Yeah. Feel all the parts to understand it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I
And
mean, oh, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say, sort of back to the podcast with the past lives and the frequency, and it is fabulous. Like, absolutely fascinating information that honestly took me time to digest.
Hmm.
And to sort of have these conversations with spirit and sort of work through it. But one analogy that they gave me was, say, in that situation with the dude at the pub, if I didn't really process it, I processed it sort of consciously, it slips sort of back into the subconscious, attaches to the nervous system, and then it becomes this open wound that doesn't go away. So eventually you've got to bring it from the backpack, bring it forward. But the experiences piece that I asked you to remind me
Yes.
of
Yeah.
is, if we don't process it in sort of this way, different situations with the same theme are going to keep coming up. And so they made it really clear that if we are sort of processing in this space of the pineal, less life lessons happen, less stuff has to be presented and put before us in order for us on a humanistic level to work through it. If we can kind of work through it they're saying in the way in which the body is designed, less of it is going to come forward
Mm-hmm. That
and
makes a lot
show
of
up
sense.
in life. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I mean, it would be lovely if it became a book at one point too, right?
Working on it.
I really think you
Yeah,
guys
I'm actually
make it
working
into
on
a
it.
book. Yes, yes. And I would really like to have Nettie on the podcast too and dig into her knowledge too. So I'm definitely going to reach out
Absolutely.
to her. Um, any other thoughts you want to share on this before we wrap it up?
No, I think that I've basically explained the basics of it all.
Mhm.
Absolutely listen to the podcast, though. One Foot in Both Worlds. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It's fascinating, brilliant information. Like fed
Agree.
from spirit. And again, I really want to give Nebby the MVP. A lot of it came through her.
Mhm.
And we would always joke on the podcast that, she would bring the information and I would be the experiencer. And it was true
Mhm.
because a lot of stuff I would always sort of have these stories to kind of go with. And that's not to say I didn't receive my own downloads. I've shared some of them today. But Nettie really does deserve kudos. I realize the information is from spirit, but her ability to be a conduit was really,
Interpret it.
yeah, really
It's very
brilliant.
clear. Yeah, it's very clear. And I've really enjoyed listening to them. Whether some of it I listened to while I was driving, some I watched, while I was cooking, like, and my brain ate it up. So I
Oh,
do
good.
definitely recommend, and you will post it on the Facebook or the Avalon Spirit Facebook group as well. So people can find it there if they're looking around and they can't find it. Um, but yeah, I definitely recommend it. This time in our lives right now is all about expanding consciousness, and consciousness is understanding consciousness, understanding the fifth, sixth dimensional beings that we really are stepping into. And so this is one wonderful avenue. So I'm so glad you could come and explain some of it and like give the outline. And anything you want to leave everyone with? A thought?
No, just go to the podcast
Go to the
and you'll
podcast.
get the full picture, but
Yes.
just let life, this doesn't mean I do it all the time. Let
Yeah.
life come, process it, feel
Yeah.
it, and we don't need anything else other than that,
Yeah. Yeah.
essentially. It's not
Amazing.
great marketing for myself, but
I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Tanya, so much. You can also book in with Tanya on avalonspirit.com under personal journey guides for mediumship. And yeah, I look forward to having you back again. And
Mm.
thank you so much for sharing these insights.
Thank you so much for having me, Ginette. I really enjoy it. Thank
So
you.
glad. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all next week.